I'm Dr. James Thompson. I am a board-certified allergist and asthma specialist in practice for the last 34 years in the Chicago and Chicago suburbs. I completed my medical training at Washington University School of Medicine, my residency in internal medicine at Chicago's University of Illinois Hospital and Clinics, and I spent a year as chief resident and instructor of medicine at the University of Illinois Hospital, and then completed allergy and immunology training and research at Washington University. My grandfather had asthma, and as a child, I remember gaping at him as he tried to catch his breath during an asthma attack. He had an inhaler at the time made of glass. It looked like a glass gun with a rubber bulb as the handle. He would squeeze the bulb to vaporize a liquid drug he poured into it, and within minutes he would be able to breathe normally. I was very curious about a disease that could over seconds to minutes take your breath away. I was determined to become an asthma doctor and help my grandfather fight this disease. Sadly, while I was in allergy specialty training, my grandfather awakened one morning very short-winded and wheezing. His reliever inhaler was not enough to ward off the asthma attack, and he died with the inhaler in his hand. These events planted some seeds of interest that grew over time and shaped my decision to be an allergy and asthma specialist. More than half the patients I see have asthma. I also assist patients in diagnosing and treating hay fever, chronic sinus problems, eczema, hives, and swelling, food allergies, drug allergies, and insect sting allergies. I appreciate my specialty because of the tremendous need for it and the fact that more than 90% of the time, people respond favorably and feel better. And I get to follow them through life. You see, unlike most subspecialties, allergists are trained to see all ages. I end up experiencing the broad spectrum of growth, development, and disease. The most common allergens that trigger asthma can be categorized into indoor and outdoor allergy triggers. Examples of outdoor triggers are tree, grass, and ragweed pollen. Those are the spring, summer, and fall triggers that are considered seasonal allergens. Some indoor triggers include dust mites, cat and dog dander, cockroach, and mouse-related allergens. Mold spores can be found indoors and outdoors, and therefore are considered year-round allergy triggers. Blacks and whites share common sensitivities to major allergy triggers, but blacks living in poor housing environments have more hypersensitivity and exposure to mouse and cockroach proteins, as well as some irritant triggers. Allergy triggers are more common in blacks for unclear reasons. But worldwide, developed nations have seen an increase in people suffering from allergic diseases. More than 20 years ago, there were publications highlighting the Hygiene Hypothesis, which accounted for an increase in allergic sensitivity resulting from living in more clean, aseptic environments, especially indoors. There appeared to be something protective about being around farm animals, bugs, and dirt, as experienced in rural farm communities. Children in urban communities who had relatively less exposure to animals and microbial organisms were more likely to become allergic years later. The thinking was that our immune system had a community of cells that would defend us against parasites and other small microorganisms, but when it was no longer needed as a result of our efforts to be germ-free, it focused on the wrong things, like dust mites, pollen, and pet dander. The immune system regards these often tolerable substances as foreign invaders, and therefore attacks them, and this results in inflammation. Now, that doesn't mean we should all start having our children take mud baths or turn our homes into animal farms. There are some downsides to that, but the concept of the hygiene hypothesis is supported by some basic science research on our immune system. Blacks in poor living conditions have more exposure to dust mites, cockroach proteins, and mice allergens. Couple that with being more sensitive to these allergy triggers and more exposure to pollution in many urban cities, you have an explanation of why we have higher rates of disease and deaths from asthma. Many health disparities are rooted in environmental factors, often referred to as the social determinants of health. These include education, housing, household and community economics, community services, access to quality food and quality health care. Allergy and immunology specialists are trained to identify trigger factors and assess indoor and outdoor surroundings to formulate a plan to reduce exposure to them. We are charged to strategize a plan tailored to the patient's environment and unique needs. This is done through a comprehensive interview with each patient, a focused physical exam, a breathing test called spirometry, and testing for allergic sensitivity, usually by skin testing. Allergists are certified to do skin testing and interpret blood tests that may reflect allergic inflammation, infectious inflammation, or autoimmune inflammation. Lupus is a common autoimmune disease that disproportionately impacts Blacks, especially Black women. The starting point in treating any potentially serious disease is making the correct diagnosis. Identifying allergic and non-allergic trigger factors are critical steps in reducing severe and potentially fatal asthma attacks, which occurs more often in the Black community.